Welcome to the Municipal Voice, CCM's radio podcast in collaboration with WNHH 103.5 FM, connecting Connecticut's municipalities. We're your source for news across the municipal level, all over Connecticut. I'm your host, Matt Ford. Be sure to like this video and let us know what you think in the comments below. In the studio with me today is CJ May, the Refuse and Recycling Coordinator for the City of Waterbury, and Jennifer Heaton-Jones, the Executive Director of the Housatonic Resources Recovery Authority. Thank you guys for coming in today.
Thank you.
So we're here today to talk about recycling, and for people that are paying attention to the news right now, it's been a big topic, especially in these past few weeks. We've had stories in the Current, the Atlantic, all over, specifically about some of the stuff that's going on in Connecticut. So we wrote about it in our magazine, Connecticut Town and City. Jennifer, you were quoted in that piece. Can you tell us a little bit about what's happening right now and what's affecting in Connecticut and abroad?
Absolutely. And I will start with just the simple basic, what folks are doing at the curb.
Yeah.
So, folks set out their blue bin and that material is then taken to a material recovery facility after it's been brought to a transfer station, and it's sorted and baled. And that material is sold as a commodity. Yeah. And so what you put in your blue bin is really important because it tells what the value will be at the back end as a commodity. And historically, those bales were being sent to mills here in the United States or in China. And then maybe I would say for the last 8 to 10 years, we really saw that the markets were hot.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of return on that material. And so because the material recovery facilities were reaping those benefits, the healthy profits, they were sharing that revenue with our municipalities.
Okay.
And basically, they were sharing it to win over contracts so they get that tonnage coming off the curb. The problem with the material is either they're putting the wrong thing in the curb, or the material recovery facility. We call it a MRF. I'm just going to call it a MRF now.
What was that again? A material recovery facility. MRF. Okay.
So it's easier to just say MRF.
You got it.
So that material was being sent to China and wasn't always clean. And when right. So what does that mean, clean? Because a lot of people think
garbage.
Clean recyclables. Does that mean the peanut butter in my peanut butter jar? No, we're talking about items that don't belong. So items in the blue bin that shouldn't be there. They're unwanted. They're
For example, what do we get a lot of?
A rubber hose.
Okay, rubber, not recyclable.
Not recyclable. Propane tanks, not recyclable.
Yeah, I imagine that's a little bit of a surprise for some people collecting too. We get tanks and other pressure vessels, which should absolutely not be in there, correct?
And dangerous.
Yeah, so, they could explode. They could have flammable stuff in them.
Right. And then there's items that's inside your home that you would just normally think like, oh, it's plastic. I can put it in.
What's a less obvious bad one?
So we call it a spiral wound container.
Spiral wound one.
So what would that be? A peanut jar that's cardboard in the middle and metal on the ends.
They're popping fresh, but they're not recycling fresh. Yeah.
That spiral bound container is non-recyclable. But folks would say, oh, it's cardboard. It's metal. I can recycle it. Yeah. But it's out in what we call the universal.
Now, is that because of the actual cardboard itself and the metal, or is it because they're combined into one item?
Because they're combined into one item.
And they would have to be separated, and that doesn't work because they're attached.
Right. And then there are items like ice cream containers. Believe it or not, you think
like the cardboard kind of regular half-gallon sort of one?
Exactly. So the fibers and the plastics that is made out of doesn't have the same value. There's no... it's not really a commodity, so it's not wanted. So we actually don't want it in. So it's in the out category, not the in category.
Huh.
So it can be complicated, but that's basically when we say the recyclables aren't clean, and we say they're contaminated, they are contaminated with items we don't want because they can't be sold to market to be made into a new product. So that resulted in the China sword.
Okay, the China sword. So this is a new policy, or not super new, but policy from China promoting themselves and basically saying we don't want your recyclables and your junk anymore.
Right. So they've created sort of their own domestic market right now, but also it had a lot to do with brokers were sending bales of material that were contaminated with actual garbage in them, and then they were having to deal with that residual waste and paying for that processing. So now what they're saying is we're not going to take anything that has 0.5% contamination. And our average bale has 20% contamination.
Okay, that's a little bit far off the mark.
Right. So because of that, our material recovery facilities, our MRFs, a lot of them are finding themselves having to stockpile the material.
Okay.
Those contracts are starting to reverse for our municipalities. So we're starting to see where our towns once made money from sharing that revenue because markets were hot.
Yeah.
Now that the markets are down, those MRFs need to recover their costs. So now they're charging the municipalities hundreds of thousands of dollars.
All right. Well, speaking of the municipalities, CJ, how is the Chinese national sword policy been affecting things in Waterbury?
It's affecting City of Waterbury's refuse and recycling efforts the same way it has most Connecticut's towns and, frankly, most cities and municipalities throughout the United States. We were seeing income, just as Jen mentioned. Our income wasn't big for single stream. It was $4.25 a ton, but that means every time we recycled a ton of materials, not only did we earn that $4.25, but at that time we also avoided paying $63 a ton if we were to send it as trash. So the net benefit was about $67 per ton. Now we are still saving money from recycling, but certainly not in the same way that we used to. We're saving approximately only $25 a ton because we are paying to send our recyclables to one of the sorting centers, but we're paying a lot in trash too. So it's still costing us more to put stuff into the trash.
So it's cheaper than trash, but it's not profitable like it used to be.
And that has really altered our budget. So we have people in City Hall looking at this and saying, what are we going to do? Just as I think everybody in CSAM and throughout Connecticut are saying, my gosh, this is changing the world for recycling and for trash and for the budgeting that's associated with these operations.
And speaking of the budgeting and the cost, tipping fees are being a term that gets thrown in battle.
Sure,
Can you explain what a tipping fee is and kind of how that is structured?
Great. I mean, there's a number of different costs associated with collecting trash or collecting recycling, every from buying the bin to having the guy who drives up on the truck. It's off the truck, so you have to pay for the gasoline, the workers' wages, the medical expenses. All of that is an associated fee. But the tipping fee is the fee that you actually pay to dump generally 1 ton of material at either a trash disposal facility, such as the burn plant in Bristol or Bridgeport, or the tipping fee you'd pay to dump a ton of material at the MRF, the material recovery facility that sorts the recyclables, where Waterbury's goes for Oak Ridge.
Yeah.
And so that's the per ton tipping fee. And so again, we were having a positive rate. We were being paid $4.25, and now we do have a tipping fee to dump our recyclables. They do get recycled, but it's costing them because the economics have changed so drastically.
Okay. So from our research and in an article in our magazine, we have mayors and first selectmen noting that this has gone from a negative to a positive. Jennifer, do you see the market changing back anytime soon, meaning sending recyclables over to China, or will we have to find just a new way to do this?
I don't see in the near future that we're going to see a rise in the markets. Partly that has to do with what is China going to do, and China's not really going to share that with us right now. So I will say that China has invested in some mills here in the United States. They're not online yet, but when they do come online, I can see some change in the market. I also see other solutions being created and other alternatives domestically. So that may help and change as time goes on. But in the immediate future, no, I don't see the markets changing.
And talking about alternatives being created, are you talking about companies? Are you talking about technology? Are you talking about government?
Probably a little bit of everything. So an example would be urban miners coming into the state of Connecticut to be a glass processor. That's a company coming in that has technology to make a new product with our glass. And government played a role because Connecticut DEP has already given them the permit and the go-ahead to come in and build that facility. So it's a relationship that has to happen. And our local, state, federal government, they need to play a role in supporting and enhancing, giving incentives for producers and manufacturers to set shop up here.
All right. So as we just pointed out, one of the things we want to talk about is that regular waste is still more expensive. Let's see. We shouldn't stop recycling, right?
I don't think we should stop recycling. We should always be wise and assess whether the stuff we're putting in the recycling bin is helping the environment and is something that we can recycle with an appropriate amount of expense or certainly income if we're making money off of those things. So items which really shouldn't be recycled, we haven't been recycling. The ones that we are recycling now in the bin, the paper, the cans, the bottles, and the plastic, that we tell people to recycle generally do have a market. Not right now, or at least not a good market. But we do think that those markets will bounce back. But as Jen said, we're not seeing this happening tomorrow. So I don't think that you should train people one way and then train them back and then keep changing it back and forth every day based on a quick market change. But we do need to assess, gosh, will these materials be marketable? Will they have an economic value, say, 2-3 years down the road, once these technologies, once the enterprise efforts that Jen was mentioning kick into place? The stuff that is in the bins, the rubber hoses and the plastic playground toys, we don't envision them having a market. So we still need to emphasize the same thing to people. Please make sure those bad boys don't get into the bin. So
rather than switch, month to month or whatever, consistency of message of this is good to recycle, this is not, is kind of an important thing. And it shouldn't be based on the profitability, but just the feasibility of that material actually being successfully recycled.
In the long run, yes. And I think somehow you might consider investing in recycling the same way people advise people to invest in, say, the stock market or for your retirement, is that you shouldn't be necessarily buying up and down every day. Some people enjoy doing that. But one of the better ways to do that is a long-term investment in stuff that over the long run is going to be helpful to you. If we were to find a paper grade that was no longer sellable, then we should ditch that. But I think that's been assessed. And I think one thing I'd like to mention, though, is people can find out what you can recycle in Connecticut by visiting recyclect.com. And the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection put together a list based on conversations with all of the recycling centers around Connecticut. What can you take and what can you not take? And so they have one consistent message. And it's been so confusing for people in Connecticut. Each town had a different list.
We get something from the city and say, put this in, not this. And of course, in New Haven, they say, don't put the pizza boxes in because that's a big one.
And it's changed. Well, now pizza boxes are officially on the yes list.
They're on the yes list now.
They're on the list. I mean, if you've got a half a pizza in there, no, call me. I'll eat the pizza. But if it's a little bit of grease left over, that's acceptable.
That's okay now.
And that's acceptable throughout. Generally, the state of Connecticut, unless the town has specifically said no. But that's been a big help for unifying this. And we really want to, again, over the long term, help Connecticut residents understand that there is one general list. Get people used to that so there's less confusion. And this will, in the long run, help our markets.
Okay, so you're saying a general list, so it basically applies to the entire state. But you said certain places can otherwise specify?
Well, many towns have not updated or followed through. And there's some towns where they've said, no, okay, Connecticut says you will take pizza boxes, but we, a specific town, do not want pizza boxes.
And that would be because of the particular MRF they're using or something? Or, Jennifer?
Okay, well, I can speak into that a little bit. I know you had some questions for me about, difference between single stream and dual
we're
stream.
Gonna get into it, definitely.
And we'll get into that with this because I think it all kind of plays together.
Please.
So yes, we do have this new Connecticut Universal List, and there are towns like HRA towns that have a little bit of a modification on that. So most towns now, most curbside, so there's the single stream, where
big bin, if it's recyclable, it just goes in.
Everything goes in one, right? Well, we're changing that terminology, by the way. We don't really call it single stream anymore. We call it mixed recycling.
Mixed recycling.
And the reason why we call it mixed recycling is everyone got confused with single stream, like, oh, I can put everything and anything I want, including trash. So it's not one stream of everything. It's mixed recycling. It's a mix of all recyclable items. So that's where the What's In, What's Out campaign comes into play, of all the things that can be mixed into that. Now, we do still have municipalities with local recycling centers that have dual stream. Dual stream is a container for paper and cardboard, what we call fibers, and a container for plastic, metal, and glass. And so it's separated into two dual streams. Why? Because the material is cleaner that way, and it's already separated. It doesn't have to go to the MRF, be processed, and cost all those processing costs. Why would a municipality sort of manipulate that What's In, What's Out campaign slightly? Well, sometimes it's for the good. So in the What's In, What's Out campaign, in our list, we don't take shredded paper. We don't want shredded paper in the blue bin. And why? Because shredded paper is a contaminant. It doesn't get processed at the MRF.
It's small. It gets into other things.
It's small. It either attaches itself to other material. It just falls through the cracks and becomes residual
it's wet,
waste.
Sticks to a bottle.
Exactly. But it's still highly recyclable. It actually is a high-grade, valuable material that can be made into paper again. So how do we keep capturing that? So in the HRA municipalities, we started having separate collection containers at our local recycling center where we told residents, don't put it in your blue bin. We honor the What's In, What's Out campaign. Don't put it in your mixed recycling. But if you want to recycle it, because it's good for the environment and sustainable, bring it to the local recycling center and we will accept it. And we will collect it there separately and it will get recycled.
Because if it is kept separate from the get-go, I imagine that's pretty clean stuff, because it's, you know, the shredder in the office. You're not putting cans in a shredder. It's a big bag full of paper. Exactly.
And so then goes into that whole the conversation about glass and HRA now taking glass out of our mixed recycling bin. Why? Because we want to create that higher grade material at the back end of the MRF, and glass can be a contaminant. So that's a way that we're manipulating the guide, but only manipulating it in the sense that we're still saying it's recyclable, but we want to collect it separate.
Yeah. You've mentioned a couple times the organization you work with, HRA. Could you tell everyone what the HRA is and kind of who you cover and what your mission is?
Okay. So we are a regional governmental waste management and recycling authority.
Okay, you're an authority. So you're not a town government, you're not the state government, you're a regional authority.
We are a regional authority. Okay. By state statute, we are a municipal agency. So I represent 11 municipalities, and those are Bethel, Bridgewater, Brookfield, Danbury, Kent, New Fairfield, New Milford, Newtown, Reading, Ridgefield, and Sherman.
All along the Housatonic. Makes sense.
Along the Housatonic.
Okay.
So basically, we help our municipalities stay in compliance with state regulations. We help them manage the waste. We deal with the haulers. We permit them. Every hauler in the state of Connecticut must be registered to do business in the municipality in which they collect. Okay. So we help facilitate that on their behalf. So those are some of the things. We also do public education, a lot of public education.
Okay. You have a website, I assume?
We do.
People can find stuff?
HRRA.org.
Great. All right. So we just talked about dual and multi-stream. Moving forward, what can we do? There's a local company called Urban Miners that resells timber and other goods from houses that are being demolished. They take them apart and they say, we've got 300 square feet of floorboard. We've got this much, shingles. We've got windows. We've got architectural features. Will there be a new market for recyclables like glass, plastic, cardboard in the future that could actually stay in the States and be used here rather than sent to China, melted down, whatever? Is there stuff can be done here?
In response to that, no, I just want to throw out a challenge out here to remind people that last year, the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, DEEP, announced a collaborative effort with the Closed Loop Fund, which is funded by Coke and Pepsi, Walmart, some really big organizations. $10 million is available for entrepreneurs or existing businesses in Connecticut that will help address some of those issues.
Okay, it's available. $10 million in Connecticut.
$10 million in Connecticut. Okay. And so I talked to DEEP actually yesterday when we were talking about bottle bill issues, and I said, has anybody sort of tapped for that or nudged about it? And they say no. So it's sitting there, and we really love to. We can share certainly some ideas that we have as people who are working in the business now and what we're seeing. But I'm really hoping that one of your listeners has a giant light bulb go on in their head, and they say, oh, I've got an idea, and they're going to help us address these issues in ways that we haven't even thought of.
And where would they find that information if they were?
The Department of Energy and Environmental Protection.
The CT DEP or the...
Yeah, Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection has that offer. We're working with Closed Loop Fund, and I think this is a great thing to catapult us even further.
Okay, and this is important because we were looking at some reports from the NLC, and America does deal with two-thirds of its recyclables. We traditionally have sent about a third away, half of that to China, but 2/3 of it stays right here. So we need things domestic to deal with. And from an environmental standpoint, I imagine like saving on shipping and sort of the carbon footprint is a big plus too to doing things locally.
Oh, absolutely. You mentioned Urban Miners, and so Urban Miners is coming in hopefully next year for glass processing.
Yeah.
And we actually have 50. There's probably more than 50 glass processors in the United States. SMI, Strategic Material, that's out of South Windsor, Connecticut. Yeah. They have 50 plants.
That's a big one.
It's a big one. But they only want bottle bill glass. They want source separated clean glass that hasn't gone through a material recovery facility. Okay. And so right now, basically,
beer bottles, whatever, beverage bottles with a deposit on them are good stuff.
Good stuff, because when you take it to a redemption center, it's nice and clean, and so therefore they can easily process the material without having to clean it. But when it goes through a material recovery facility, so why is glass such a problem? And then I'll get back to urban miners. Glass is a problem in the material recovery facility because it breaks. It breaks at the curb. It breaks in the truck. It breaks on the tipping
Throw it in
floor.
there and everyone knows that sound.
It just keeps breaking over and over and again, all through the transportation. And then it gets processed at the MRF, where there's V-screen separators and there's magnets and, all of this material is being baled into different categories. But the glass, because it's become small pieces of particles and shards and dust, has attached itself to the fibers. And then what ends up happening...
So it sticks into the piece of cardboard.
It degrades it. But also, you have to look at... so on our website, we have some information about MRF glass. MRF glass doesn't look like glass. It looks like a big, giant pile of garbage because everything from bottle caps, lighters, batteries, anything that's under 2 inches falls through the crack, makes it through, and it combines itself with the MRF glass.
Okay.
So it doesn't have any value. So our material recovery facilities, they're not making money like other commodities. They're having to pay to get rid of this stuff. So like I know our material recovery facility pays about $95 a ton. That's between disposal and transportation. And they send it over 500 miles out of Connecticut just to get rid of it. So urban miners coming into the state gives us another alternative because Strategic only wants the clean glass. Urban miners will take the MRF glass. Now, but don't.
That would include like window glass. Like how far does that go?
Well, it just.
Oh, the CJ says no to window glass.
No window glass.
This is things that people need to know. They think it's glass. It could be recycled.
Right. So recyclable glass. What glass can be recycled in our mixed recycling bin is if it contained food and water. I mean, food and water, food or beverage. That's glass we'll accept. So it was.
So if it was safe for you to put something on your mouth, it's safe to put in the recycling.
If it was a vessel or a container, a packaging container, because a drinking glass is not acceptable.
Okay. Drinking glass also not the right kind of glass.
Right. So if it was a vessel that contained and packaged, it's packaged in glass and held beverages or food, it can go in your blue bin. But there are items like that you would think, oh, can't they be recycled? Pyrex dish. No, don't put it in your blue bin.
I've definitely broken a glass vase and like it's clear glass. I'll put it in. Nope.
It's a contaminant. So they all melt at different levels, at different heats, and they're not all made of the same material. So we don't want all of those. We don't want Pyrex. We don't want light bulbs. We don't want mirrors. We don't want glass from an automobile. That's out. But going back to urban miners, they can take MRF glass that's just beverage and food container glass. They can sort out all those contaminants and they use it in their new product. I believe it's called Positive. It's a composite cement block for building and construction. But remember, they still have to clean it and get out all those contaminants. So the higher the contamination, the higher the tip fee, the cost for the municipality and the taxpayers. The cleaner the material, the cleaner the glass, the cheaper it is. So if we have source separated glass from the redemption system, whether it's going to Strategic or going to urban miners, it's more sustainable, efficient, economical. It makes more sense. Why would we want to dirty it and then have to clean it? Why not just keep it clean from the beginning? So we do have these manufacturers coming on plant, coming into the state, and it is creating solutions for markets.
Let me pause for one moment to let everyone know that you are listening to the Municipal Voice on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, broadcasting live from downtown New Haven. We are streaming live on TuneIn Radio and NewHavenIndependent.org. We are also streaming live on Facebook Live. Just go to facebook.com/NewHavenIndependent or go to CCM's Facebook page. All right. And before we move on to something else, just one other thing. We were talking about glass getting contaminant, dirty glass. But glass itself as a material is infinite recyclable. It's like great. It doesn't create a lot of, as far as I know, chemicals. It's not made from oil or a petrochemical.
No, it's all natural resources.
It's sand that got melted down and can be melted over and over again.
Right? But it less temperatures to melt glass that's already been made into glass than to create it from raw material. So it takes more energy and more heat to create glass from raw materials. So if you're a glass manufacturer and you can get your hand on a clean supply of used glass, it's cheaper and easier because it's already been through the process once? Yes, and now they just have to melt it at a lower temperature.
That's great. CJ, moving forward, what kind of ideas do you think we need for the future in this state?
Well, I think that getting us on the same page educationally is very helpful.
Okay, yeah, we haven't talked much about education.
Well, the Recycle CT website I mentioned has been very helpful, at least for me. I've been working in Waterbury for only 4 years, and there hadn't been a lot of education. I think many municipalities, unlike HR, which has still been pushing for decades, got the ball going in the early 1990s when we started recycling, and then as budget kits came along and people retired, very little education was done as we entered the new millennium.
Yeah.
And so they might not have had a recycling coordinator. They might not have had any Facebook page or anything about recycling education. So when I arrived in Waterbury, I realized that one of the chief things to do to help us boost our recycling rate was to make sure our populace got educated about what you can and what you can't recycle.
Yeah.
And so some of this education is done by Facebook. I'm shameless on Facebook. I'm there every day, shouting out information to City of Waterbury residents. And I have to admit, it's having an effect. When we announced our new recycling program, we had 13,000 views on Facebook because people shared that we were going to be delivering new recycling carts curbside. So we can reach people through social media. Social media actually does have a good side, despite all the hits it's taking. I also go out to every single event I can and make personal connections. So I think this needs to happen so that people understand that it's not just put it in a bin, that there is a story about what you have, where it came from, and it's going to have a different story depending upon whether you put it in the trash bin or put it into the recycling bin. And when you help anybody from a 6-year-old child at a school to a 60-year-old senior citizen understand this story, then they're more likely to participate in the program. Oh, I just heard this guy, he talked about what happens if we put the stuff in the trash and all goes to Bristol and boom, it goes on fire. And I actually use environmental magic to talk about that.
Environmental magic?
I use environmental magic to talk about this, and actually lighting a $5 bill in fire, having it go up in flames, helps people remember that their money, their taxpayer money, is going up in flames when they put their recyclables into the trash. So education can be done on so many levels. So that's one basic, but I think it's really good that you just heard from Jen about the possibilities for a renewed way to collect to process glass. And I must say that we've lost capacity in Connecticut. We had Simpkins here in New Haven. That was a paperboard manufacturer. Federal Paperboard was also on the coast, and we had another glass manufacturing facility. These have all gone by the wayside over the last 30 years. I'd love to see some more green jobs created in Connecticut. And the interesting thing is they weren't called green jobs. They were just jobs. They were just businesses.
Yeah.
But now if we're looking at ideas of, how do we help protect our environment and help our economy, this is a win-win.
Yeah. And that's actually an interesting point that some of these companies predated kind of the curbside. You know, there was always a market for taking glass and melting it back down. Like these aren't crazy pie in the sky ideas. It makes sense.
It was a business. And I've talked to people in the business for 30 years. And I remember one of them who said, I like recycling. It's a good business.
Yeah.
But he said, the day I stop making money on this business, that's the day I retire. And so he was really a businessman who supported the environment. And I think we have to understand this. This is a wonderful opportunity for collaborative effort between people who want to help the planet, and they want to help their city save money, and people with bright ideas who know how to run a business.
And that is an interesting point that we bring up. We talk about the cost of the city and the tipping fees, but we're talking about cost of cities. That translates to cost to the taxpayers who are paying those taxes. So it's not just, I want to save the environment, which we all do, but it's hitting people in their pocketbooks, essentially, in the long run. And also, speaking of social media for education, we did a poll on our Facebook page leading up to this show asking people, hey, would you separate your recyclables if it would save your town money?
Yeah.
And the other option was, no, I don't have time. 87% said they would.
Wow.
Nice.
So that's encouraging. But that means 13% would rather just pay more and throw stuff away. So there's a challenge there, I think.
Sure. A statistic that was thrown out, and Jen, I don't know if you heard this when you began working in recycling. I think this was probably just a anecdotal statistic that was that 15% of the people would always recycle because they were environmental lovers. They would carry their can or bottle or piece of paper a mile to put it in the right bin because that's just who they are. Then you might have on the other end of the spectrum 15% of the people, and that's similar to your 13% there, who really don't care about this, and they really are not going to bother themselves to deal with it, no matter what you do, unless you happen to sit there and hit them with a fine.
They're not going to spend more than a split second to
they're not gonna
throw it away.
And so for those people, I actually don't concern myself too much with them. As long as they're not messing up my recycling carts, I can't force you to recycle in your house. It's the law. You need to do it, but I can't force you. But the people that I work on mostly, and I imagine Jen does too, it's the 70% of the people in the middle who will recycle if they understand why it's important, if they're given the right bin, they're given the right instructions, and they understand which things go in which bins. And those people are the ones we can reach. They're the ones who may or may not, depending on how we run our program.
Just they need that little bit of push and education.
They're the ones who need to recycle right.
Yeah. So Jennifer, we were talking about education being important. What kind of educational things does HRA do?
We go into classrooms, K through 12. We do focus on third grade for state curriculum, sticking with what their guidelines are.
Third grade is kind of the time that's when you tell kids about recycling.
Yeah, and they really absorb it and they take it home and they get excited about it. So we focus on third grade. We do go into the schools. We have about an hour presentation, but we also have contests. We have a billboard contest where we provoke the question and talk about recycling. They have to research it, create art around it, and then they win a billboard in our region for the whole month of May.
And that's open to kids in all the member
11,
towns?
Yes, 11 municipalities. So we try to be creative in regards to our public education. We do education at all of our collection events, whether it's hazardous waste or an e-waste collection, public education through our transfer stations, haulers. We give material to all haulers to put them in their invoices so we can capture every resident. So every way that we can, whether it's social media, websites, or hard copies, we try to reach
it sounds
the public.
like you're putting in a lot of effort to try to get the kids especially excited, like you were saying before, to get that next generation kind of sold on the idea. I feel like, I'm old enough that I remember when we first started doing recycling, and like the first time there was a bin at the thing, and it was an exciting new thing. We're going to save the planet. We're going to recycle. But 20, 30 years on now, maybe it, as an exciting topic, it's lost some of that luster for people. Like, oh yeah, recycling. It's just another thing you do, like the garbage, like the whatever. It's not some new thing. So education as a way to get people really thinking about the impact of what they're doing.
So I'm going to jump on that and say public education is really important. And I do think it is a key element and tool for us to use, but it's not the end all. And I do think that folks need to have some incentive, and either, using pay as you throw, which is you pay for what you throw away, like using it like a utility. So trash and recycling, you pay for what you're putting out there rather than everybody paying the same fee. So there's that. There's the deposit law. So that's a hot topic right now. Let's expand and modernize the bottle bill.
Putting it onto water bottles, wine bottles.
Well, it is already on water bottles, but let's add wine. Let's deal with this issue that we have with glass. Glass has always been a problem in the material recovery facility. We're able to ignore it when markets were high. Now that the markets are down, we can't ignore it. But the bottle bill is a great way to create a solution for source separation of glass. But how do you get people to do it? You give them a high deposit fee. 5 cents doesn't mean the same as it used to. 20 years ago, we all wanted to collect bottles and cans.
Do we know how long has it been 5 cents in Connecticut?
86?
I think even the 70s was when it was initiated.
Since it started, since it was
as
created,
long as I can remember, which is a pretty long time at this
well,
point.
It's never changed since it was created. So why don't we make it 10 cents or even 25 cents like the governor has proposed? The state of Maine has a 95% return rate on their deposits because there's an incentive. I like to call it a bounty. Somebody, they want to they go after that material. They want to bring it back, return it to a redemption
Maine
center.
Gets what, 25? Or they get 10?
10.
They have different fees, 10 cents, 15 cents. It depends on the size and the container.
Different bottles have different values.
Yeah. So that's an incentive program where you've now invested in this product you've purchased, and you want that money back. So you may not have recyclers who are doing it because they want to, folks who are not recyclers, but folks who have this material, they want to take it back. There's an incentive. So why not expand the bottle bill and modernize it? But the only way that will happen is those redemption centers and grocery stores that have redemption rooms need to be compensated. And the only way they'll be compensated through the distributor is to increase their handling fee. And that's a whole nother topic.
CJ's all behind that one.
Well, I'm certainly behind that because she's saying exactly what needs to be said, that we need to have an incentive for consumers and people to take their cans and bottles back, which would help reduce the problem that we have in sorting recyclables. But the businesses do need to be supported. I remember bringing my cans and bottles to a redemption center in Waterbury, where I work, and talking to the guy, talking shop. And I said, how's things going? And he says, well, if they don't increase that handling fee, I'm going to be out of business.
Okay.
Guess what? He's out of business.
Okay.
He's out of business because the handling fee had been, I don't know, for certain containers it was $0.015. Other containers it may have been 2 cents, but it was very low because it hadn't been updated to reflect current cost of living and cost of business. And because of that, redemption centers throughout the state of Connecticut have been going out of business. And those that are still in, the liquor stores and the supermarkets, are still having to do the same job, but with increasing costs and not with increasing support. So the bill that's being considered right now by the legislature up in Hartford would actually modernize our bill and help us address so many issues, economic issues, environmental issues, win-win-win. We're hoping that they'll do this, but we certainly want to make sure that people who are providing this service, the businesses, the distributors, the liquor stores, are being compensated.
So they have a reason to do it.
So that they have a reason to do it, and so there's no excessive burden on them. And this would help us achieve our solid waste management goals and address a lot of the economic concerns you raised at the top of the hour.
Oh, and remove the burden from the municipalities.
Amen.
Right? So up the deposit.
Yeah, up the deposit. Increase the handling fee.
Now, how much do we have to worry about people pulling a Cosmo Kramer from Seinfeld? The scheme where he fills up a truck with funds from one state and goes to the other state to get, I think, to Michigan to get the 10 cents.
That is a concern. So the border towns or the distributors who are on the border of our state have that concern. Border fraud is what it's called.
Oh, it has an official name.
It has a name. Well, there's technology for that. So Tomra and Avipco, who have the reverse vending machines.
Which are Connecticut businesses, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay. Connecticut based.
Yep.
All right.
Their headquarters are here. So they have technology to help. There are other bottle bill states that have these concerns and who have addressed them. So there's a solution for everything. Yeah. We just have to be creative.
I mean, we're talking a lot about what we can do in Connecticut, which obviously is a concern to us and our organization because we're a Connecticut organization. But for the audience in general, is there any sort of push or anything at the federal level for any of this stuff? Like, will there ever be a federal bottle bill?
Gosh, I don't think so at this point because each state is so very independent. I mean, at this point, I think it's only about 10 states, Jen. Is that about 10 states that have some sort of bottle bill? Of those, 2, I think, have the 10-cent level, and the rest are basically at the 5-cent level. We would love to see that, but there is a hue and cry from businesses and from other folks who say, no, they consider a tax. If you get the money back, that's not a tax. You don't get taxes back. This is a redemption. And so I would think you'd only have this sort of thing if we were on a war footing the way we were in World War II, when all of a sudden the whole world changed in a moment and everybody started doing things differently. I'm hoping that each state will consider this. Each state will advance towards something that works for their state. And we don't have to go to a federal level because we've addressed them all on our own.
I would say that that's along the lines of EPR, so extended producer responsibility, and making the manufacturers and the producers responsible for the end life of their product.
So, like you're talking about, let's say Trader Joe's has excessive packaging. They got a big old plastic box that holds a banana or something. Like, not quite, but we've seen something along the lines where people take a picture of it and it's wrapped in plastic and a plastic and a plastic. And so what we're talking about is if a company chooses to put too much plastic, essentially, unnecessary.
Okay, so there's two, we're talking similar,
two different
things. So Trader Joe's is a retailer.
Okay.
Trader Joe's has decided to package that material, and that's how they want to sell it or present that to their consumer, to their customer. That's a little different than what I'm talking about. I'm talking about extended producer responsibility, where the manufacturer, the bottle or the product or the cereal container, the toothpaste, the sauce jar. So in the EU and in Canada, they have a national program. So you were asking about a federal solution. We could have it. I don't, in the United States, we're very autonomous from state to state, so I'm not sure.
What
if
you
it
can
will
sell
ever
in
have.
Connecticut, you can't necessarily in.
But we
another
have in another place. We have a lot of EPR programs. We have some here in the state of Connecticut. We have the mattress EPR program. We have paint. We have thermostats. We have e-waste. So when you purchase paint, for example, you pay an additional 72 cents on the gallon, and that money goes into a stewardship program. That stewardship pays for paint to be handled, transported, and processed somewhere else and either be made into another product. It can be made into recycled paint, or it's incinerated. But the stewardship pays for the cost to handle the paint. We have a mattress program. Now, when you buy a mattress, you pay $9 for each unit, and that goes into a stewardship program. So now when you have a mattress to get rid of, it used to cost a municipality about $30 a mattress to dispose of, and it would go to incinerator. Now the mattresses actually get sort of filleted. They get cut open. The fibers, the textiles get sent to be recycled.
Okay.
The wood fibers are recycled. The metal is recycled.
The springs come out of the box spring. The wood goes another place.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you have the e-waste EPR program where you can now recycle electronics for free. The stewardship program, those manufacturers pay into the system and they have to pay for these products to be recycled. So it's the same for packaging. So all of the items that are in our blue bin, the concept, the idea is that the manufacturers and the producers would be paying for the disposal and the processing of that material rather than all of us. So we pay our haulers now to take the material away and it gets sent to a material recovery facility, and the municipalities are paying tip fees and disposal fees. And there's this whole market thing. Well, the EPR would basically say all the manufacturers and the producers would be responsible for the end life of those products. They're going to pay for the disposal. They're going to pay for the processing. They have something in the game to say, well, maybe instead of making this product out of cardboard and metal, and it's not recyclable, I have to pay a higher fee on that. I will make my product packaged in something more recyclable and pay less to have it processed. So now they have skin in the game.
And that's specific to packaging, more or less?
It's specific to packaging and what we're talking about, the blue bin, curbside recycling, that particular EPR. But we could talk about EPR for everything. Hazardous waste, pesticides. There's so much cost in disposal of material management.
We're not talking about, for instance, the newspaper having to
Yes, absolutely. Newspaper, everything that's in your blue bin, paper, fibers.
So the publishing company could?
Whatever would be the producer of that material.
Oh, wait, the paper manufacturer.
Yes.
All right. And one last thing I wanted to ask, I don't know if this is a thing you guys deal with at all, but is there any sort of future for composting as part of the equation?
Yes.
It's the big one, and you can talk about what you're working on. Basically, approximately a third of everything people throw away is considered organic. And by that I mean leaves,
food scrap,
grass,
leaves,
food scraps, according to EPA. And if we can recover that stuff, and there is a value to all that material, keeping them out of your trash, well, that cuts your trash down by a third right off the bat.
Yeah.
However, collecting organics needs to be done a little more carefully even than recyclables, because if your recycling bin sits at the curb for a couple of weeks or whatever, that's fine.
Yeah.
But your organics need to be collected safely. I'm inspired, however, by visits to Berkeley, California, and San Francisco, where they have 3 bins at the curb.
Okay.
A trash cart, a recycling cart for mixed recyclables, and an organics cart for all their leaves, their branches, et cetera, et cetera. By pulling those things out, a lot of West Coast communities are diverting more than 50% of what we call trash here in New England to either a recycling center to a composting center. And again, I think this dovetails it back to the business that we have an exceptional example of this with quantum biopower here in Connecticut.
Okay.
Quantum biopower generates clean energy by taking food waste, other scraps, pulling the material out. The solids go and become a garden soil, a soil amendment used by their sister company to make stuff you use in your garden.
Okay, fertilizer.
And fertilizer, makes soil, potting soil, and the energy can be generated off of the methane that's produced from that.
So they let it sit there, ferment, whatever, bubble, it makes gas, you burn it, you get electricity.
And so to my mind, this is wonderful because everybody's looking for clean energy. Everybody's looking to divert stuff out of their trash bin. Win-win. We're hoping to see more of that coming in Connecticut. And Jen, maybe you're more up on it than I do in terms of what people are doing. People are experimenting with collecting organics curbside. West Hartford has done an experimentation. Jen, how are you handling organics in HRA?
Well, I started the first organics curbside program in 2013 in the town of Bridgewater. It was a small pilot.
Okay.
It was quite successful. We had the average 10 pounds a week per resident. Clean material. It was going to a permitted facility near us. We have we have 2 permitted facilities in the HRA region, one in New Milford Farms, and one in Danbury, New England compost. And so that material was going to be processed to actually make compost. It wasn't going to an AD facility. Overall, I would say it was very successful. Where I went wrong was I offered it for free. So for a year, we had great material. The processor loved it. But when we, at the end of the pilot, said, okay, it's not free anymore, you have to pay for the processing, none of the residents wanted to pay. So what did I do? I created a different solution, and we created transformed it from a curbside to a drop-off program.
Okay.
So now we have 5 drop-off programs in HRA. So the towns of Bridgewater, Newtown, New Fairfield, Reading, and Ridgefield all have drop-off programs where you as a resident can bring your bucket to the transfer station and drop it off, and it's being either sent to New England Compost, New Milford Farms, or Quantum Biopower. So it depends on where we are in the region it's being sent, but we are diverting that organic material that doesn't need to go to the incinerator to come up with a solution.
I know in New Haven, the Public Works actually offers compost bins for free to residents.
Yes.
Show up, they will give you a little setup to make your own compost. And is that something that you would also encourage? That, don't even put in the stream to begin with. Just have a garden. Obviously, it does work for apartment.
So so when I was running these pilots and trying to find a solution to deal with this 30% of organic or food waste in the waste stream, I knew that there were going to, from a survey, I knew there were going to be folks that were not going to put it out the curb.
Yeah.
And there were folks who wanted compost in their backyard, but they didn't because they had all these fears. Oh, I'm going to have animals. It's going to smell.
Yeah.
So I went to the next best thing and said, well, then I'm going to teach composting classes. So I went to UConn. I took the master composting course.
Oh, you're a master composter.
Now I'm a master composter.
You have your black belt.
And so now I teach composting classes at the HRA office. We actually were hosting one this evening. And so we try to,
if you're in HRA town, go learn about composting tonight.
So at least once a month, we try to provide that as a service and education to the public so that they can compost in their backyard.
Excellent. Well, we have talked about recycling for an entire show now, and there's so much more to talk about. So I would encourage everyone to check out HRA's website, check out our website, and find out more about this. Read the article in CT&C. And comment below this if you have any other questions we'd like to address in the future.
And we hope that everybody who would be interested in recycling, whether as a business person or a municipality or a citizen, join us, or at least like the Connecticut Recyclers Coalition. Jen and I are both involved with the CRC. We have a lot of events that help people in Connecticut look at improving our economy as well as our environment through better waste management practices. So Connecticut Recyclers Coalition. You can find us via Google on our website or on our Facebook page.
Thank you.
Thank you. And talking about continuing the conversation elsewhere, because it is a big topic right now, Kevin Maloney from CCM Communications is going to be on WSHU right after the show, coming up at 1, talking more about recycling. So check out WSHU.org to continue the conversation with Kevin Maloney and some others. I'd like to thank CJ May from the City of Waterbury and Jennifer Heaton-Jones of the Houstonic Resources Recovery Authority. The Municipal Voice is a co-production by CCM and WNHH 103.5 FM. Kevin Maloney is our executive producer. Christopher Gilson is our producer. Harry Draws is on the boards, and I'm Matt Ford, your host. Be sure to check out our Facebook page and give us a like. Watch out for CCM Chat Series on YouTube page, and just search for CCM Chats, and you'll find them in a convenient playlist. See you next time.
Who is the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities? We are more. We are more than one mission. We are more than one town. We are more than one issue. At CCM, we work every day on the front lines and behind the scenes for all of Connecticut's towns and cities. We are advocates, spearheading efforts to promote legislation beneficial to Connecticut property taxpayers, from fighting budget cuts to hosting debates, to defeating or amending harmful bills. We are protecting workers by understanding the value of a vibrant workforce and the role that relief of mandates plays in sustaining public sector jobs. We are safe neighborhoods, committed to engaging with local organizations to promote the safety, security, and prosperity of our communities. We are Executive Search, tapping our vast network to find the best people for senior municipal management positions at a cost much less than most private firms. We are lower energy costs, saving towns, school districts, and local public agencies tens of millions of tax dollars on the purchase of electricity and natural gas through CCM Energy. We are affordable insurance options, assuring quality municipal coverage while achieving a $5 million members' equity distribution in 2018. We are prescription drug savings, achieving nearly $12 million in savings for residents at no cost to the town or city. And through municipal training workshops, we are giving the next generation of town staff, elected and appointed officials the training, certifications, and confidence they need to lead our towns into the future. In all of these ways and more, we are collaborating for the common good. Be part of the CCM cause. There is nothing more important than helping leaders govern wisely and helping people live well. Call or email us today to add your support to the work we are doing for the towns and cities of Connecticut. Learn more at ccm-ct.org. There is nothing more important than helping leaders govern wisely and helping